Oh, wow. Well, we've just come through session 3 to a toru of our Kaimahi Hauora program with the beautiful Julie Sack. Am I saying that correctly, Julie? Satch?
Sage.
Sage. Thank you.
Rhymes with H. That's how I learned
that's
it.
a good way to remember it.
Yeah,
Julie Sage, who has been our session Kaitiaki, looking at the zone of fabulousness. And Julie, I just wanted to start by saying, wow, there was so much chat going on. There was so much mixing around of ideas and thoughts and feelings and people wanting to interact with this beautiful work that you have brought to this Kaimahi Hauora program. And I don't think I've quite seen that much jumping in and diving in and people wanting to play with it and understand it and mix it around. And I might start off with a few key things that came out for me was, in particular at the start of the session, you were talking a little bit about language and how privatizing the experience, hiding the suffering and the social injustice kind of makes it more it shifts the perspective from it being visible to invisible. So the visible would be on the worker and the invisible is the workplace. So could you just say a little bit more about that for those kaimahi that haven't been able to be with us today?
Well, I guess if we talk about workers as burnt out or, we're actually giving them a mental health diagnosis in a way. And that feels so wrong to me because the workplace is often the context of the pain. It's not so much vicarious trauma makes us think that if we as workers sit and listen to our clients, then we will be traumatized by their trauma. And I think that's a really problematic way of thinking because it's not their trauma that impacts us, it's their oppressions, it's their inability to navigate a horrible system that discriminates them based on their gender or their race, or it just makes things so so I really struggle. It's not my clients' stories that pain me, it's the fact that they can't get social justice actually, and it's the systems a lot of the time. I think about Māori women who won't call the police around family violence, and I completely understand that, because if they called the police, the chances of their tāne being arrested and then imprisoned and are much higher than for other people. So it's kind of like, that's what causes me spiritual pain, not the fact that they tell me the stories. It's not the stories, it's the response to the stories that causes me pain.
And, oh man, I've got to try and keep this together because you've actually triggered a little thing inside of me, and that's okay. But as a mother of Māori boys, it's, I'm getting emotional talking about it, but I know that if they are, if we're talking about the police, for example, I know that if my children are stopped by the police, they have a higher chance of being booked and being placed into the system versus a boy that's non-Māori, of actually all Polynesian and Māori are pretty much very similar. So of a boy who's of European descent, so for us, I was challenged today in the session by a couple of things. And I spoke about how from uncomfortable spaces comes greatest growth. So there's been some growth and actually some relearning and rethinking. And that is around collective ways, because we, if I just speak on behalf of, my personal experiences in whakaaro as an Indigenous person, collectively it's tātou tātou. I mean, during COVID, during that first lockdown, was a perfect example of the collective way of coming together and thinking, both within the charity non-profit spaces, but also from iwi and hapu spaces, where we just came together like never before, Oh, yes, actually, in time, we have definitely come like that before. But like the sharing of kai, getting food out to our people, making sure they were nurtured, looked after, especially those with young family and those, you know, and those kuia kaumātua. So that kind of collective way of thinking, when it needs to happen, it just happens, you know. But then in saying that, when we talked about whānau, I know of our own whānau trauma where we've definitely swept things under the carpet that have needed to be surfaced. And so, and part of that kind of shaming, you know, of not bringing things to the surface, and what you talked about, Julie, where women, Māori women, don't want to call the police because we don't know what kind of policeman we're going to get. You know, there's not a lot of trust on that system. And that's all through colonized, you know, some of that is colonization and the ongoing things that happen to us as a people. And I know that I'm only talking from a Māori perspective at the moment, but it's actually our daily lives. It really is. It, you know, for me, yeah, it's a daily thing that we all, it's a daily like barrier when a police car goes past and we naturally like, are they going to follow us? Or, you know, there's just there's these layers of things. But I think today the session really helped to just reflect on those and yeah, I just really enjoyed that session. It really challenged me too, because Wairua for us is such a different perspective than the Wairua that was presented, yet it's actually all Wairua, right? The impact is on, yeah. So that there was just so much learning today. So I need to mahi to you. And I've probably spoken for way too long, but yeah, it was just.
Oh, Carl. And I'd like to pick up on that, Tuihana, in the sense that today's kaupapa was Wairua, or take notice. And I think this was really very much a session to take notice. Take notice. One of the things that came out was how our Western thinking perhaps needs to be challenged a lot more, and how our Indigenous culture of and te ao Māori and Mātauranga Māori, which we learned into a lot more in the first two sessions as well, is here and it's accessible, and how important it is for us to start to take notice of some of those challenges that come, like Tuihana has just given an example to. And one of the things I'm really aware of, and Julie, it would be great to hear a little bit more from you in the context of today's session, is that something that's come through all of our sessions so far is what you picked up on, Tuihana, about from the difference comes the greatest growth. And I'm kind of paraphrasing you a bit there, but that has come through strongly. So in Metatini session, we were talking about te whare tapawha, is that everyone has a different place or a way to feel, smell that. And it's the difference that creates the beauty of coming together. And in session 2, we talked about the kaha model, and hoha is about us feeling things that aren't so comfortable, but being with that. And today in Vicky's video, she talked about differences in teams, about bouncing and bumping together, and how important that is in terms of the respect and the dignity, the words that she was using. So I think that our kaimahi in this sector are needing to address that every day in the work that they are doing, and it's such an important thing to remember into. And Julie, I just wonder if you want to pick up on that a little bit more for the context of what you were talking about in our session today.
I'm still thinking about that, Claire. In what way?
You know, I just wanted to take a moment, sorry, Julie, just while you think on that, and is that to actually take a moment to acknowledge those that have been coming into the sessions. And if even those that don't come into the sessions but are still out there in this space working, you know, doing the mahi in the community, in our hapori all across Aotearoa. So, you know, for those that watch this video, and for all of us within this space, like, we need to mahi to one another and acknowledge one another for the contributions that we are making. You know, because the one thing that, you know, you spoke about was how do we collectively celebrate and appreciate? Yeah. So I think this is a moment to celebrate and to also to celebrate all the contributions that are being made to whānau, to hapori, to, you know, that kind of in the corporate mainstream world are really underappreciated. And then also to show our appreciation. So yeah, just thought we'd take that moment to actually call that one out, so that we are celebrating, we are appreciating.
Kia ora tui hana, and we're all coming from different places to do that togetherness, you know.
I think that what she was saying about diversity isn't different people, but it's different ideas. And I know I've worked in workplaces where there's been a capturing, I used to call it a colonizing of organizations by psychological knowledge. And I wasn't trained in that kind of knowledge. So it didn't create space for my ways of thinking in that sort of strict psychological way of responding. So so that idea that diversity is about different ways of thinking as well, and I think that's critical, and I think that's what I like so much about Vicky's work, is that it disrupts and challenges and rubs up against some of things that are kind of taken for granted truth. You know, like we talk a lot about trauma-informed care, but you know, what does that actually mean? And when we talk about trauma, we're kind of hiding the difference between, say, somebody can be traumatized by a car accident or they can be traumatized by rape. Those are two completely different experiences, and actually we need to be talking about the specifics and the details, and not just lumping it into a big trauma basket, because they're quite different and they have quite different impacts. So yeah, I guess working in sexual violence, we're kind of, when we use the word trauma, we're hiding who did what to whom, aren't we? We're just saying someone's traumatized. Well, what happened to them? What's that in relation to? Who did what to them is a more important kind of understanding, because that's where we're going to find the politics of power and the politics of oppression and the politics of human beings doing horrible things to other human beings. And if we don't name that and we just say, oh, they've got post-traumatic stress disorder, it kind of is not locating it or contextualizing it, I guess is what I'd say.
And I think there was something very powerful too, Julie, that you were talking about around language, and how we obviously use language, or sometimes don't use language, which is exactly what you're talking about now. So you know, the words dignity and respect came out. That there was a lot of, one thing that came out strongly in our session was that there was a lot of provocative language used. You'd mentioned that word provocative. Vicky in the videos as being quite provocative, and I think it did stimulate some, you know, shuffling, which is the good thing. You know, that's what she's saying, is that's the good thing, is to name those things, to bring them out, for us to be, what was her word? We have an ethical obligation within organizations where we work together, not necessarily to like each other, but to find ways to actually not attack, but critique. So all of these things can be quite provocative notions, can't they?
That's right. And I mean, I sometimes see people going quite pale when I talk about feedback, critique and accountability, because, you know, I think culturally as a nation, we're not very good at thinking about how to do that. And yet we've got this ethical obligation to do. You know, I've worked with a colleague who was described as burnt out, and I wonder, now that I've learnt this stuff, it's like, if I had spoken up about it and if I had done something differently, would that person still be in the work? You know, it's like we've got to keep each other together and make it able for us to be here, even though there's times when we're spiritually pained by the things we see that go on in the world. We see some a side of life that sometimes other people just don't see. And sometimes when I go out of this world, out of my work world and into my home world, and I meet people who don't work in this sector, and I'll forget and I'll speak as if I was still in the sector, and they just look shocked and horrified, and I'm like, this is real life. This stuff happens, and they're kind of like they're illusioned, and they don't want to be disillusioned.
Yeah.
You know, it's too horrible for them to contemplate a world where these things can happen, and yet it's something we face on a daily basis. Hey, as workers who work in sexual violence, it's my normal, which is challenging when I go out into the other part of my life.
And I guess, Tui Hannah?
No, sorry. Keep going, Claire.
I was just going to say, I guess that is our challenge, is how to be activators of this within, where to start. So is it within our workplaces? Is it with one colleague? Is it within our own whānau?
Or is it to just make a start? Yeah, because, you know, it's like when you throw, I used to talk about it often, when you throw a pebble into the water and that ripple effect. So, yeah.
Maybe that's a great place to, I don't want to say close because it's not a closing, but to dot out of this recording and leave it to all of the wonderful Kaimahi who will watch this and have been on our sessions or have not been able to attend this one, to see what ripple can we create by dropping the pebble. And thank you again, Julie. Thank you, Tui Hannah,
thank you,
the CSI team and behind.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Helen, for coming in. I don't know, my computer suddenly got a gremlin in it.
Well, I think we need to take a moment to mahita Julie. Thank you so much, Julie. You know, we know you're unwell. Thank goodness it's a very mild case of COVID, but just, you know, it's not nice to be mawiri, to be unwell and delivering these things sometimes. So we implore you to take a whakatā this afternoon, take a rest, and thank you again for your wisdom and your pūmanawa that you brought to today's session. So, and to Helen for always rescuing us, and you know, just it's been a great session. Ngā mihi aroha, kia ora.
Kia ora.